Hello there, optimists! Welcome to the build video for the solo Magicka Dragonknight. So when you're playing solo, build needs to be all about having a combination of doing damage and having good survivability, and that is exactly what this build is all about, as you'll see as we go through not only the skills, but also the inventory and what we're wearing in our armory. So we'll start off with the character sheet, and as you can see, we are running at just under 30,000 Magicka, and just under 21,000 health. Remember, this is completely unbuffed. I haven't put on any food, haven't put on any potions, haven't activated any skills. This is how we start off with no buffs at all. We've got just under 19,000 spell resistance and just over 13,000 physical resistance. Again, unbuffed, nothing's been activated. We are sitting at just under 3,300 spell damage, 47% spell critical, and a spell penetration at just under 5,500. For our attributes, everything has gone into Magicka, all 64 points, nothing into health, nothing into stamina. Even though it is a solo build, we're not putting anything in there for extra survivability. We just don't need it. For this build, we're running as a Breton, good survivability and excellent mag recovery, very handy for the build. We're using the Atronach as our boon to give us extra mag recovery. You could swap this out if you want to go with something different to increase the amount of damage. Ignore the fact that I've got lycanthropy on here and I'm a werewolf, completely irrelevant to the build, just happened to be on the character. And Major Prophecy and Major Savagery are things that have been added to us due to some of the skills we have. I will explain those in a second. So under our skills, on our primary bar, we are using every single one of the active skills that are available under the Ardent Flame class skill line. I'll explain those as we go and why we're doing that, but we're using all 5 active skills, plus also the ultimate. And also while we're here, I have put all of the passives on under this skill line. I'll explain these as we go along. So the first skill I want to highlight, which is from this Ardent Flame line, is the Flames of Oblivion skill. At the beginning of a fight, I will use this as it will then start doing damage over time. Also pay attention, as I said, it's coming from the Ardent Flame skill line. We are going to hit skill after skill from that same skill line, and I'll show you why as we go through. But we start off with that first off. This skill is also here, however, for another extra reason, which I'll highlight here. While you have it slotted just for having it on your bar, you gain Major Prophecy and Major Savagery, which will increase your spell and weapon critical ratings. Now, when we went through the character sheet, I highlighted that we have both of them running, and that's because I have this skill slotted. And that's why we have this skill slotted. The other skills we have on this bar all have their own unique purpose as well, which all benefits the build and the rotation. But this skill has a double benefit. One, it will do damage over time and be there for us ongoing through the fight. But just having it on the bar, even without pressing the button, if you forget in a rotation, etc., it is also giving you that Major Prophecy, which is improving the amount of damage we do as a Magicka build. The next skill along is Unrelenting Grip, again from the same class line, and this has another double benefit to it. So yes, it will deal flame damage, but in addition, if you're running solo and you've got a bit of a trash pack or a few different enemies around you want to try and group up, you can use it to bring things to you. There is another morph which will take you to them. I use the one which brings them to you. And in addition to that, one other key benefit of this is that if the enemy cannot be moved, you will restore the Magicka instantly, the 100%. So it will not cost you anything to use it and not manage to chain something. So if you use it and hit a boss because it's a range or something has moved out of range, you need to hit it, and you want to use this as a range skill, you're slightly out of range of your other skills that we're going to come to, then this is an extra that it can do multiple different things within one skill. The next skill is Engulfing Flames. Now this will do an initial hit as well as doing extra damage over time. And on top of that, affected enemies that take damage from all flame damage attacks based on your offensive stats up to an extra maximum 10%. Now here it's showing me I'm doing 9%. When I'm actually fully buffed, it hits that 10% cap. So you are doing even more damage on top of that. It's fire damage after fire damage after fire damage. Bit of a theme, that's the Dragonknight, and it's a lot of fun. Now continuing on again with that theme, we then move on to burning Embers. Now this skill will again do an initial hit and then do another load of flame damage over time. It says last 14 seconds, same as the last skill, so you're going to have skill after skill, similar time frames, nice and easy to work into your rotation, but you are doing more and more fire damage again and again to enemies. On top of that, any enemies affected by the initial hit are also giving the burning status effect. Now with that on, they're taking even more damage from any fire damage that you inflict on them. And as you've seen, it's fire damage after fire damage after fire damage that we are inputting on these guys. So we are maxing out the amount of damage we can put onto an enemy on the basis of fire damage. And as if all of that wasn't enough, this skill also has an extra benefit. So at the end of that 14 seconds, you will get healed for 75% of the total damage that you have inflicted as a result of using this skill. So let's just go through that again. Not only are you going to kick out damage to enemies, plus then damage over time to enemies, and afflict them with an effect of the burning status, but you are also going to then heal for 75% of all of that damage at the end of that skill running. So this skill is not only a damage over time, it is an extra heal for your build, which when you're running solo, is a fantastic addition to have into the rotation. So not only does it play part of the next skill, which we'll talk through in a second, but it also acts as an extra heal within the build. It's a fantastic skill to have on your bar. Now the final active skill that is on this bar for me is the Molten Whip. Now this is yet another fire damage skill, and yes, it's from the same skill line, the Ardent Flame skill line. And if you look into this, not only does it do a hit of a nice large amount of damage, and that's why it's here in my spammable slot as well, but it also will do extra damage to enemies on the basis of off balance. So if you hit an enemy that is immobile or stunned, you will put them off balance. But that's not even the extra, the main point of this skill. It's that whilst you've got it slotted, not even being used, so remember, we've got all of these other skills that are in the Ardent Flame skill line. If we use those other skills in a rotation, whenever we activate one of those, we will gain a stack of Seething Fury, which increases the damage of your next Molten Whip by 33%. So, if you do 3 in a row, you're hitting the max. You've added an extra nearly 100, well, essentially it's 100%. Let's be honest, 99, it's 100, right? So you are increasing that damage you're doing, essentially doubling it. So, activate the other skills along the bar, then use your whip, and it'll do twice the amount of damage that it says here. So it's saying 7233, we're actually going to hit a nice 14k. It's actually stacking even higher than that with other things going on. But we are hitting nice and heavy. So your rotation becomes simple. Use your other skills, hit your whip, we'll go back to the other bar, we'll do what we need to do on there, we'll come back over here, we'll use the other Ardent Flame skills, and we'll hit our whip again. Nice and simple rotation with nice big amounts of damage coming out of that whip, which is in our spammable slot. For me, square is the spammable button to use. Put it there, nice and easy. Whenever you need to hit it, you can just hit it. Do a lot of damage. It's really, really effective. Nice little extra perk of doing so as well, that it will also increase your spell damage a further 75 for 5 seconds as a result of using it. That's not really what we're after, but it's nice to have a nice little extra in there. We'll take that. Thanks very much. So for our ultimate, sticking with the theme of using the Ardent Flame skills, we are using the Standard of Might. Now this you will have seen multiple times if you've been playing the game. People will drop a nice battle standard, big flag, which will deal out a load of damage. Now this lasts for 20 seconds, kicking out 3,900 damage every second, but it also applies Major Defile to the enemies, which reduce their healing received and their health recovery by 16%. Now this isn't necessarily the major thing you're looking for in a bit of PvE. It's useful in a bit of PvP, for example, but on top of it doing damage to the enemies, it will also give you the ability to stand in the area at the same time, increasing your damage done by 15% and reducing your damage taken by 15%. So by dropping this ultimate on them, you are adding an extra 15% damage to your output, reducing the damage you're taking by 15%, as well as kicking out nearly 4,000 damage every second for the next 20 seconds. Very, very useful, very, very effective if you're running in solo. Also very effective if you're running in groups, depending on your setup. It does have an ability, a synergy that an ally can use. So if you have got anyone with you, or somebody decides to activate your synergy when they're in a fight, on a boss fight with you, out on a world boss or something like that, it will kick out more damage. Not necessarily after that, but it's a nice extra to have. The main point here is being able to increase the damage you put out, whilst also simultaneously reducing the damage you are taking. It's very, very effective when you're running solo. So that covers our front bar. We'll now switch over and take a look at what we've got on our back bar. So we start off with Unstable Wall of Fire. Again, I put this in my spammable position because it's a nice easy one to switch over to my bar and hit nice and fast if I need it. Now this will run for 10 seconds once we've slammed it down, and during those 10 seconds it will be kicking out over 1,000 flame damage to enemies in the target area every 1 second. Now remembering that we've already got skills on our front bar that we've activated that will be doing flame damage and that will be inflicting the burning status effect to enemies and maintaining that. On top of that, this skill will mean that burning enemies will take an extra 20% more damage from this ability. So if you've already afflicted somebody with burning and then use this, they're going to take an extra 20% on top of that, which is nice. It will maintain that damage over time, and when the effect ends, the barrier will also explode and hit them for another 5,700 flame damage. Very, very effective damage over time with a nice big hit at the end of it. The next skill on our skill line here, remember on our back bar, is Elemental Drain. Now this skill is one that I will use at the very beginning of a fight. It will last for 20 seconds. It's not the first button I press, that's the one that's coming next, but it's usually the second. And this will have a double benefit. So we're using it here, if we're running solo, obviously we haven't got a tank applying any of the major breach to enemies, so this is useful for doing so. On top of that, you are also gaining minor Magicka steal. So not only have you reduced the physical and spell resistance of your enemy, but you've then also given yourself the ability to regain Magicka every second whilst you're damaging him, and that will actually stay with an uptime of 23 seconds. So this is a very, very handy skill. Remember, we are a Magicka build, so we want to maintain that Magicka restoration as long as we can, as high as we can. We've already got quite good recovery, but let's just add a little bit of extra. But it's the major breach factor that is also very useful of this skill. Now this is again from the Destruction Staff ability, so these first two abilities here are from Destruction Staff, which we're going to be using anyway. So very handy to have. I would definitely recommend you use this as a second skill in the rotation on the back bar before you run in and start hitting things. The next skill along the bar is the first skill that I use in a rotation when the fight begins, and this is Igneous Weapons. This skill is very, very useful. For us as a Magicka build, we are interested in the major sorcery that this is kicking out. Now earlier on the front bar I showed you that Flames of Oblivion is giving us the major prophecy. So add to that we are gaining major sorcery, and we are massively increasing the amount of damage we do without the need for gaining that from any potions. So we don't need to have the potions in our rotation. I still do use them, but my potions aren't giving me the major prophecy, aren't giving me the major sorcery, and can therefore be cheaper to make, cheaper ingredients. It's minor really, but these two skills are giving us a lot of benefit. So I will pop this at the beginning of the fight, then I will pop Elemental Drain, and then we will go through the rest of the rotation after that. There is obviously the extra benefit that if you are in a group, if you are with others, this will benefit them as well. But as I say, this is a solo build designed for when you're running around on your own. But if you do happen to be in a group and joining up with someone, or you leave these skills in the same place and you do group up with someone, you go into a dungeon or a trial or something, not a bad skill, not a bad benefit, a little buff to be giving to everybody else in the group, even though it's not an essential to the way we're trying to play. The next skill along is our main shield on the build. Now I'm using Igneous Shield here. You can swap this out, and I will talk through a couple of different options a little bit later on. You can slot in here instead, but I like to use Igneous Shield in here. This is a skill that is coming from the Earth and Heart skill line that we have, and I will pop this before I pop the next skill, which I'll talk through in a second, because it has an extra buff to it. So the main thing that this will do is that it will give you a damage shield of 4,400. And again, this also is a skill that will benefit others if you happen to be in a group. This is a solo build, but if you do end up grouping up with someone, group up with a friend, or you're in a dungeon or a trial, it will give an extra damage shield, although only just under 1,800, but it is an extra buff for others. The important thing here is that it's giving us our shield of 4,400, but on top of that, it is then giving us major mending, which is increasing our healing done. Now, we are not a healer. We are running as a solo build. We haven't got a healer with us. We haven't got a tank with us. So just like Elemental Drain is doing some of the things that a tank would be doing for us in terms of giving major breach to the enemy, this skill is giving major mending to us because we are going to heal ourselves. If we're running with a healer, the healer would be providing the healing to us, and they would be running major mending in some form from a skill or from an armor set, etc. But if we provide it to ourselves, we are then able to pop the next skill along, which is our heal. So we will pop this first, and then we will pop the next one along. So for me, that is L1 and then R1 here on the PlayStation. I will pop this immediately, then pop the heal straight away afterwards, and I'm increasing the amount of healing that that second skill is then doing. It's worth noting that you've got to do them relatively close together because the major mending you are gaining is only going to last 3 seconds. And yes, it's only a 16% increase, but every increase you can get in terms of a heal is worth taking. We are designed to be doing damage and killing things off, but also sustaining ourselves. So we want that little bit of extra just to give ourselves a little bit of an extra boost when we do pop that heal. So now onto the heal that we are running, and we are running Coagulating Blood. Now this is from the Draconic Power skill line, and this skill is our main heal. So once we've popped up that shield, give ourselves a little bit of a boost, we are then going to smash this button nicely, give ourselves an instant heal for 8,400, as well as increasing that amount by up to 33% based on your missing health. So actually, as your health gets lower, that number that this heal is going to do gets higher. And as if that wasn't enough, this will also give us Major Fortitude, which instantly increases our health recovery by an extra 30% for the next 20 seconds. So this button doesn't have to be used purely as a heal. It can be used as kind of a preventative measure, and indeed when I'm on my back bar I will run all of my skills before then switching across to my front bar just to maintain that little bit of a shield, that extra bit of health recovery, which means I'm not going to have those panic situations as often. If you are maintaining yourself, maintaining that recovery at all times, maintaining the shield as much as you can, whilst also giving yourself a buff and a debuff to the enemies, and slamming down your unstable wall, then you are giving a lot of benefits to yourself when you're on your main front bar and smashing out as much damage as you can in your rotation. So this heal is a very, very effective one. As I say, it comes from the Draconic Power skill line, combined with using the shield that I just showed you, which comes from the Earth and Heart skill line. Then we have tapped into all 3 skill lines within the Dragonknight class. Obviously, our front bar is pure Ardent Flame, but on our back bar here, we have taken a Draconic Power skill and a couple of Earth and Heart skills, which when we combine them all are giving a nice amount of buffs to us, nice amount of recovery when we need it. We've got a nice emergency heal, and we're relatively tanky and strong. Speaking of tanky and strong, this is where our back bar ultimate comes into play. So we are using Ferocious Leap. This is again from the Draconic Power skill line, and this will enable us to not only do damage, but also put a nice little shield around us. So as you can see, when you first pop it, you're going to launch yourself at an enemy. You're going to deal 13,000 flame damage to all enemies in the area, as well as knocking them back and stunning them for 2 seconds. It's a very, very fun thing to see happen. You will literally fly in the air, land, knock everything flying, do a load of damage. Now, obviously, some enemies can't be knocked or stunned, etc., as per some of the bosses, but majority of the time, jump into a trash pack, lots of fun, see everything go flying. But not only that, after you've leapt, you will gain a damage shield that absorbs, as it says here, 21,500 damage for the next 6 seconds. So you have just instantly applied a massive shield to yourself. In fact, it's over 100% of your health. If you looked, we were just under 21,000 when I showed the character sheet. So this damage shield is massive. On top of that, this ability scales with your max health. So when I show you some of the food options that we put in here, if you put in a food that is increasing your health amount as well as your Magicka, then you are increasing the amount of damage shield you are able to offer yourself when you use this ultimate. And it's a very cheap ultimate to have. It's only 125, some of them are 200, 250. So this is a nice ultimate to have on your back bar as a kind of, oh, here we go, I need to take a lot of damage. Jump in, do damage to the enemies, and give yourself a nice big shield. Give yourself a little bit of a breather and time as well. Give yourself a couple of seconds if there are a lot of enemies around. It's a very, very handy thing to have. I'd swap it out if you are running in a dungeon or trial group. You don't want to be doing stunning, etc. You want to probably have a bit more of a damage situation in here, but that is getting yourself into a DD build. As a solo build, I would definitely run this skill as per our front bar, which does damage and reduces the damage that we take. This one does damage and gives us a big shield, so I would use this one if you're expecting a big hit, if you've worked out the mechanics and you know what you're about to take from a boss, for example. And I'd use the other if you want to give yourself a period of time where you can stand in a certain area nice and close and just take less damage over time. Now, I have mentioned a couple of times as we've gone through that there are a couple of alternate skills you could use and put in place, so I'll talk through a few of those different options now. As I've shown so far, these are the options that I prefer to have on the build, but there are a few things that I will swap out, situation dependent, so I'll talk you through those. The first of these would be in place of Igneous Shield. Now, as I said, Igneous Shield is the preference that I go with, but you could use instead a skill from the Draconic Power skill line, and that is Volatile Armor. And you'll see this used quite a lot. This will give you a nice buff in terms of giving you Major Resolve, which increases your physical and spell resistance by a nice large amount. There are two different morphs to this effect. I have gone with Volatile Armor, which means that when you pop the skill, you will let out a release of spikes to an area around you, which will do damage over a period of time to enemies. So if you are running as a solo build, this is another way of increasing, yes, your resistances, but also sending a load of damage out to enemies. Now, while that armor is then active, anytime you are taking a hit from an enemy, you are dishing back magic damage to the enemy. So it is a nice shield. It is preferred by a lot of people. As I say, I run Igneous because it gives that major mending boost, so I can pop it and then pop my heal and gain that extra little buff. But I do swap out in some situations to using Volatile Armor, so it is a very good skill to have. The other option in this slot is Harness Magicka. Now, when I get to the inventory in a second, I talk through what we're wearing, you'll see we are wearing 5 pieces of light armor. So this is a skill that stems from that light armor skill line. It starts off as annulment, and you'll morph it into Harness Magicka, which will then give you a nice big shield. Now, the shield on this is capped at 50% of your max health. So the higher we make our max health, the higher the shield will be. And as I've said, the food that we run will give us an increase in our health. So actually this value will be above the 9,000 that it's showing here. It's more like around about 12. So this is a nice shield to have. It lasts for 6 seconds. It is a bigger shield to the one that we get from Igneous Shield. But as I say, Igneous Shield will give you that major mending buff. You won't get that from this. However, what you will get from Harness Magicka is the fact that whenever the shield absorbs some damage, you will restore 192 Magicka. And each piece of light armor that you wear increases the Magicka restored by 33%, up to a maximum of 3 times. So this is a very effective shield to have on. Because we are running 5 pieces of light armor, we can use it. If you were to, for some reason, not wear 5 pieces of light armor, if you decide to change the armor pieces that we've got that I'm showing in this build for something different, then you may well lose the ability to use this. However, this is a very effective skill. It is one I use in some situations as well. For example, if I'm running with a healer, I will probably go with having Harness Magicka on instead of having Igneous Shield, because I don't need that major mending buff. Somebody else is kicking out some heals to me. But I might need the Magicka buff because I might be going a bit more hell for leather on the attack. So it is a very effective potential alternative to use, and I'd highly recommend leveling up your light armor skill and getting the annulment, morphing it into Harness Magicka, and having it there as an option for yourself to swap in when you want to. The other potential alternative situation I mentioned as we went through is on the ultimate on this back bar. You may well want to change out Ferocious Leap if you do decide to run in a group with this build, or if you don't like Ferocious Leap and you want to use something else. Then a couple of alternatives here I would recommend looking at would be Shooting Star. Now this comes from the Mage's Guild skill line, and yes, it involves gaining yourself a lot of lore books in order to level up your Mage's Guild skill line. Now that can be a bit tedious, but if you do manage to do so, or you decide that this is what you want to do, then this skill is very effective. It will give you an ability for 200 ultimate that when you use it will deal nearly 13,000 flame damage to enemies in the area, knocking them down and stunning them. So we are getting a similar effect as to what we get over in the leap. It is slightly less damage, but on top of that, it's then adding in, instead of giving you that shield that leap is giving you, it's making sure that after impact, enemies in that area will take 4,000 flame damage every second for the next 13 seconds. So it's giving you a nice damage over time on top of that. In addition, you will generate ultimate as a result of doing so. So for every enemy that you have hit in that initial blast, you will generate 9 ultimate, which builds you back up to being able to do it again. It's a very effective skill line used by a lot of people, and I'd recommend it there as an alternative if you don't want to have leap. Another skill to look at potentially in this ultimate slot, in addition to Shooting Star, would be to have Soul Assault. Now this comes from the Soul Magic skill line, and this deals a hell of a lot of damage to a single target. So this will enable you for a cost of 175 ultimate to deal 66,000 magic damage over a period of 6 seconds. It's a channeling ability, and while channeling you gain immunity to all disabling effects. Enemies that are affected by this are revealed for 3 seconds and may not enter stealth or invisibility, which isn't something you necessarily need in PvE, but this skill deals a hell of a lot of damage, and it might be something that you want to take a look at if you don't want to use Leap or you don't want to go through the Mage's Guild sign. You can get this from Soul Magic by leveling up your Soul Magic skill line. Another alternative to take a look at, as I say, I prefer to have Leap there, and I sometimes swap out to Shooting Star if I'm DDing on this character instead of soloing, but Soul Assault is another one you could potentially take a look at. So let's take a look at what we're wearing as part of this build, and we're going to start off with the monster set. Here I am wearing Ice Heart. No major surprises here, used by a lot, but this setup means that I've got medium on my head, and when we get to shoulders you'll see I've got heavy on there. I am wearing a 5-2-2, so I am wearing 5 pieces of light armor, my chest, waist, hands, legs and feet, and then I am wearing a medium on my head and a heavy on my shoulders. All of it is in divines, and you'll note that on my monster set I have got a health enchantment on both the head and the shoulders. So Ice Heart has been chosen because we are a Magicka build, and that this will give us that nice boost to our spell critical, and when we deal critical damage we will also have a 20% chance to gain a damage shield, so yet another damage shield into the build. But whilst that damage shield is active, we are dealing out frost damage. We're all about fire, but let's have something a little bit frosty in there as well. So that is kicking out damage to enemies within 5 meters every second whilst the shield is up. So for 6 seconds we are dealing 1,000 damage a second, and it can occur once every 6 seconds. So it could in theory have 100% uptime, but it's got a 20% chance of it happening. Either way, it is a very effective shield to have. You'll see it kicking out when it's happening, and it's a very nice way of giving yourself that extra little bit of protection whilst also having a monster set that is geared towards increasing your spell critical chance and the damage that you do. So it is perfectly geared towards being a solo monster set. So as I say, with the shoulders here, we are running them on heavy because we have the head in medium. And then again, we are running with a Divine's trait, and we have put on a health enchantment to go with it. Because we are a solo build, we're not focusing everything purely on Magicka. We need to have a few bits in there for the health benefits. So we have got the shoulders and headpiece of this, giving us an extra little boost to our health, because we've put nothing in our attributes into health, we've put everything into Magicka, but then we're putting a couple of enchantments here that will counterbalance that. So in terms of the sets that we are wearing to go with this, we are wearing 2 5 pieces. Of my jewellery and weapons, I am running Mother's Sorrow, and as you can see here on the jewellery, I am running them with a Bloodthirsty trait and then a spell damage enchantment on top of that. Now, this is all designed to increase the amount of damage we do. You could run other combinations to make yourself a little bit more tanky or to increase your Magicka recovery, etc. But we are focused here on kicking out a lot of damage. We are already relatively tanky, as I've shown with the skills that we're using and the shields that we will pop and the heals that we've got available if we need them, plus having Ice Heart there, which will kick out another shield to us in terms of our set. So we don't need to focus on those areas. We are focusing instead on kicking out as much damage as we can. We've got a high Magicka threshold, we've got excellent recovery. Let's focus on increasing the amount of damage we do and giving ourselves a really nice balanced build. So this set is the Mother's Sorrow set, very popular set, and for a good reason. It will give you an amount of Magicka, it will also give you a nice boost to your spell critical, and this is where we are going to get a lot of our damage from. Add to that, we've put Bloodthirsty and Spell Damage as the traits and enchantments on all of our jewellery, and we are kicking out quite a lot of damage. We'll also swap over and take a look at the weapons here, and where they are kicking out extra damage as well. So on the front bar I am running an Inferno Staff of Mother's Sorrow. Now this I have changed to be a Nirnhoned trait, and I've also put a Fiery enchantment on it. Now we are designed to kick out a lot of fire damage, that is the whole aim of this Dragonknight build, so it is all fire focused. So we are running a Nirnhoned on the front bar, and then we are running an Infused on the back bar. And with the back bar, we are running, yes, another Fire Staff, but this time we are running a different enchantment, which increases our weapon and spell damage by 452 for the next 5 seconds. So we're going to utilize our back bar, go into our front bar, do a load of damage with our Nirnhoned Staff, swap back to our back bar, use the back bar, come back to the front, etc, etc. So with our 5 pieces of Mother's Sorrow increasing our amount of spell critical, we want something to complement what we are doing here with this build, and I have chosen the Burning Spellweave set. So we are wearing 5 pieces of this. I'll start here by showing off the chest. As you can see, we are running Divines, and indeed we are running Divines on all 5 pieces of this set. And all of them are running a max Magicka enchantment. So the purpose of these setups is that we are increasing our Mundustone effects, which is for us the Atronach, which is giving us an increased amount of Magicka recovery, and then we are adding an amount of maximum Magicka each time on top of that. So we have designed this to be giving us a lot of Magicka, a lot of Magicka recovery, and the sets that we have chosen are giving us so far a lot of spell critical, and here with the Burning Spellweave set we are gaining a lot of damage. As you can see, this is kicking out, yes, more Magicka and some spell damage and some spell crit. But on top of that, when we deal damage with a flame damage ability, of which we have many, our entire front bar for a start, plus our unstable wall on our back bar, then we are applying the burning status effect to the enemy and increasing our spell damage by a further 490 for the next 8 seconds. Now it can occur every 12 seconds, which means you're going to have 4 seconds of downtime, but 2/3 of the time you're going to have an increased spell damage of nearly 500, which is kicking out a lot of damage, especially when you consider this is geared to be a solo build. We are relatively tanky, relatively strong, very well sustained, excellent recovery. We are in a very, very good position with this build, and this is running 5 pieces of light armor without needing to change ourselves to medium or heavy to make ourselves tanky enough. We are able to run around, do most content, as well as diving in, if we want to, into a group situation and running as DD without making any changes to our setup. As I said, there are a couple of changes you can make, and I've shown them in the skills that you would decide to change around. And again, you could change a monster set, so it wasn't Ice Heart. If you didn't need the extra protection, you could go for something that was DD orientated, like Embers or something like that. But here we are running purely with a build that is designed to do a lot of damage and maintain itself very well. And the combination of Burning Spellweave and Mother's Sorrow together with Ice Heart as the monster set is giving you that all-round build survivability, whilst meaning you can have a lot of fun and kick out a fair amount of damage in the process. I will just show you here that those 5 pieces, the chest, waist, hands, legs and feet, are all light armor with Divine's trait and max Magicka enchantment on them. So where can you get these pieces from? Well, Burning Spellweave is a set that comes from running the City of Ash dungeon, which is available relatively early on in your progress through. And then the Mother's Sorrow set is an overland set, which you can get from Deshaan. You can get the jewellery by visiting the dolmens, they drop very easily, and then you want to try and get hold of the staffs as well. Because it's an overland set, Mother's Sorrow, you can purchase that through guild traders. Burning Spellweave, you will need to go and get hold of yourself by running City of Ash. And then the monster set of Iceheart comes from running Direfrost Keep on Veteran. That's probably the hardest bit of the lot for you to get hold of, but it is extremely doable. And personally, I run that with 3 damage dealers and a healer. Don't need a tank when you go in there. And you should be able to queue yourself nice and easy to get in there. Right, so what food and potions am I running on this build? Well, for food, I use the Withered Tree Inn Venison Pot Roast. Nice and simple. This is giving us max health and max magicka, as well as max stamina in there, for a nice extended period of time. I recommend having a food. There are other options here that you could go with that will give you health and magicka. That's your focus, not necessarily the stamina, but because we're a solo build and we've got nothing that is geared towards supporting our stamina, then I run this because you will be doing a fair amount of running around, no doubt, and it's always frustrating as a magicka build to not have any stamina there or any stamina recovery. So I run this, a nice tri-stat food, give you a nice boost across the board. Now when it comes to potions, I use a Tri-Stat, Essence of Health. This will give you a nice big boost to your health immediately, as well as giving you Major Fortitude, which increases your health recovery by 30%. Now we are getting that from elsewhere when we use our heal ability on our back bar, but it's a nice extra bonus to have it in there as well. The real benefit of this being, though, that it will also give you a nice big boost to your magicka, as well as your magicka recovery for the next by 30% for the next 47 seconds in this instance for me. The extra perk to your stamina is a nice extra to have, but it's not an essential. But I use these ongoing. I do also sometimes switch out and go for the Essence of Magicka if I don't need the boost to health, depending on the situation I'm in. So I have both of them on my Hot Wheel, nice and easy to run. And the Essence of Magicka here is giving me that magicka boost as well as that magicka recovery. So if I don't need the health element to it, I'm simply giving myself the magicka element to it. I'm not focused on giving myself the stamina element to it. You can see there's a couple of potions further down, Essence of Stamina, but they're just random ones that have been picked up whilst I've been out soloing, and they're nothing created. So with all of that shown off, I will now show you me eating some of the food and popping some of the potions. If I put all my buffs back on the screen here for you to see, I'll eat and then pop potions, pop a few skills, and show you what happens on the character sheet here as we do each individual. I'll just make sure I show you here all the different buffs that I've added to myself as a result of everything I've done, and what each one does. And then let's take a quick look at the character sheet for an overall view of the stats and where things stand. And that is it. Thank you very much for watching. There are a couple more videos coming. This same character is going to run as a pure DD, as a healer, and as a tank, with a view that the armory system coming into play will enable you to switch between the lot. So I'm going to show you each individual setup that this one character is going to have. So look out for those videos as they come out in the future. Give us a like, drop a comment, share with others. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, Optimists, take care.